What's up, Everyday Athlete Podcast Network listeners? Thanks for joining us for the second season of Enduring Minds. Our last episode, Evan and I had the fantastic opportunity to chat with our wives, Cassie and Lori, so you guys get to know us a little bit better. And now back to our regular show where we bring guests on, where we talk to them about their mental health, their struggles, how they've overcome them, and just have conversations around it because our goal is to make this a supportive space and to remove the stigma surrounding men and mental health. Evan, thanks for joining me for season 2, man. I really appreciate you coming on. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's crazy to say season 2 already. It's almost a year since we started even talking about this. So I'm glad we're bringing more people on, and I think we have some really amazing guests lined up, including today as well.
Yeah, here's the cool thing, right? So it was around this time a year ago where an email from you to myself and Ohm was about a completely different topic, and we wound up here. And now a year later, we're starting episode 2, and it's been so well received that I think we have guests already booked out till November, maybe even December at this point, which is just tells you how important this topic really is.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things and bringing our wives on for the first episode, I think is just kind of highlighting the fact that those conversations are meant to be had and not to be in the shadows. So I'm excited to get into it. And I think the guests that we have coming on are even transcending sport, which I think is what our whole goal was from the beginning is this isn't just about endurance sports. This is about everybody, and everybody goes through something.
Absolutely. So I'm going to introduce our first guest of season 2. His name is Peter Vercio. He's a sports and events director for Scratch Labs, the nutrition product company. I met Peter a number of years ago, and I will tell you that every single time I have a conversation with him, there are laughs to be had for sure, but it always goes deeper when we start to talk about our everyday lives, the things that we're dealing with, the obstacles that we're confronting, how do we get past them? And we always end up diving deeper than just the surface level, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely wanted to have him on our show for season 2, because I know that he will allow us to get into the weeds, shall we say, with him and get really deep in conversations, which I know will help a lot of people out there. So enough rambling from me. Let me bring Peter on and let's have a wonderful conversation. Peter, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to catch up with you both.
I think I nailed the sports marketing and events director title correctly, which I started like, how do I can't remember it. Where do I go to find this?
Hopefully one of the least interesting things about me, but it is descriptive of what I do. So
it is absolutely the least descriptive thing about you. Do you recall how you got connected to Run Try Bike? I know it was through Ohm a number of years ago, but was it through Reed and Ohm?
I think it was at TRE. Reed Burrows introduced me quickly to Ohm, and then when we got back, he introduced us via email, and then the three of us met, I believe. I think that was 3 years ago, or maybe 2 years ago.
Had to be 3 years ago. And okay. Here's the cool thing, right? So Reed has shared his mental health struggles on runtrimag.com in both our print form as well as on our digital platform. And it's just kind of like full circle now that you're on this podcast to have conversations about dealing with mental health of your own, but in general, men, because I know of the work that you've done with Brad Huff as well.
Yeah, Reed is one of my favorite athletes to talk with just because of the depth of conversation he immediately takes you to.
Yes.
I mean, that was my first instinct with him, was that this is going to be somebody that we're not going to talk about shallow stuff, and that's continued to be true. Brad Huff is another great example of that, of someone that you're never going to talk about the weather with Brad. You go deep and you laugh along the way, and you're probably going to cry at some point. And so, I've been really honored to get to work with both of them.
Before we get into the serious questions, and I'll let Evan lead with his first question after this, but does Brad Huff not look like Woody Harrelson in some of his pictures?
He 100% does. He's like a jacked Woody Harrelson, like,
right?
Yes, that is the perfect descriptor of him, and he's just as fun. Not stoned as much, from what I know of Woody Harrelson from seeing on a few podcasts, but yeah, that is such a great descriptor, and I never thought of that.
I'm trying to visualize it now.
Brad's got arms though, like he's just jacked. It's crazy.
Evan, I'll share a picture of you because there's one where he's like he has stuffed all this food in his jersey, and so it's like I mean bulging out, not just like a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
And his face, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is Woody Harrelson doing a bit as a cyclist right now.
And you know, a lot of cyclists, you look at their physique and they're tiny guys. Brad is not. And
No, he's not.
And you would never know this talking to me. I think he's a 10-time national champ and the most humble guy. You would never know that from hanging out with Brad.
Yeah, we're going to get him on the show too because his list of accolades is dwarfed by the things that he has gone through and talks about. And I think that's his biggest achievement, his openness and honesty and his vulnerability with us it has been amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it truly is. Like, you know, similarly to what I'm joking about earlier, Brad being a 10-time national champ is the least interesting thing about him.
Yeah.
The depth of humanity and the work he's doing now with Tulsa Tough and some of the other organizations that he's working with.
Well, why don't we dive into? I'm excited to see where it goes because, like Jason said, we're trying to do a little bit of a different format this year, and we're just gonna have a conversation. I think that's the best place to start. So I'm going to start off with what you said right off the bat of, you know, it's the least interesting thing about you. We like to talk about identity on this show. We've talked about it a lot last year. I've gone through it myself of, you know, who am I? You know, the age old question of like, what do you do? Isn't the explanation of who you are. So if you were to describe yourself outside of what you do, like who is Peter?
That's a good question. A very hard one to answer. I'm becoming a Buddhist monk in 2 months, and so probably the answer to that is who knows. I don't know, but I think, you know, to answer that as best I can, I'm someone that relentlessly wants to learn, you know, about myself and then understand the rest of the world. I've studied philosophy. I've studied Buddhism for 15 years, 16 years now, and continually reading. You know, during COVID, I think I read 350 books. And so I would say I'm just endlessly performing experiments on myself and then kind of going like, what does this mean for the rest of the world? And so I really try to approach the world with curiosity, and I don't always do that, but I do my best to. And so I think that's probably the easiest way to summarize myself.
It's interesting about reading 350 books during the pandemic, plus now becoming a Buddhist monk, because I know your history has been in some super high stress jobs where you're trying to raise funds for companies, where you're, you know, it's ROI driven, data driven. Like if the numbers don't pan out, like bad things are going to happen in most people's minds, right? Whatever that bad thing is what's there. So has it always been a driver for you to kind of put yourself into a different world by reading those books? Because for me, when I'm reading a book, I have removed myself from the physical setting that I am in, and now I'm in imagination land. Even if I'm reading a nonfiction book, I'm in imagination land. I'm putting myself in that person's shoes and imagining my life as them in a sense. So is that how you deal with those stressful scenarios too?
Mm. Certainly at times. You're reminding me of a quote. I think it's C.S. Lewis that said, you know, the man that reads books can live 1,000 lives. The man that doesn't, but one, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think there has certainly been part of that a lot of my life. During some of those stressful periods that you're referencing, I didn't actually read a lot. You know, I would say my nervous system was so jacked up, I couldn't sit down and read. So I did the doom scrolling, I did the watching shows, all that kind of stuff to kind of cope. And then as I started to come back to that, you know, slow down a little bit, I did find that reading did allow me to be in different places. Now I find that I'm almost in two places at once as I'm reading. I'm totally in the story, and I'm also totally like, the story's in me. And both of those are true at the same time. And that's been a really profound shift for me in reading, that I can be reading a fiction book that's like seemingly not at all relatable to my life, and it actually then does apply quite well. And probably, honestly, the first book that ever did that for me, and this is probably a strange thing, but is the Ramayana, which is a Hindu scripture. And I read that and I was like, this isn't describing some other world I'm trying to get to. This is describing my own mind. And that was at that point where I was really trying to slow down, and it was really hard for me. And so reading a book like that was profound.
What was the catalyst? What was the thing that you said, I got to slow down?
Yeah. I hit the breaking point. I'd worked 100 hours a week for years. I had probably 4 years straight where either me fundraising or making a sale, everybody's paychecks relied on that. And I think that's something I could probably handle now if it was from a sense of alignment. But really, I was trying to be good enough at that point in my life. And that really put a lot of pressure on me because it wasn't just, can I make sure everybody's paid for? It's like, I'm good enough if everybody's paid. And so when COVID hit, I shut down my company. We're working on a huge deal with hospitals. It would have been a $20 million deal. And we were, probably 6 to 9 months away on that. The CEO had guaranteed that it was going to happen. And COVID hit and it just shut down. And he called me and he said, I'm losing $40 million a month. I can't do this. And I just went, I'm a complete failure and I have to admit it. And so I just went into a hole from that for a bit there. And that was the point where it was like, I have to slow down. I don't really get a choice in this.
Yeah. The thing that kind of comes to mind and some of the stuff that Jason shared with me about happiness, you talked about, this, I thought if I worked harder, had all of these things in this like life that I thought I would always wanted, that I'd be happier. And it's like, then you fall short of those expectations of that emotional state of those expectations. I can only imagine, having an entire company literally like gone in the blink of an eye. I would imagine how that can impact you. And you're like, well, I thought I was supposed to be happy after I like achieved all these things. And that's that, that achievement, outcome versus process, all those things that we talk about. And I know you lean heavily into the process side of things now. So how did you make that shift between like chasing this, like really this like unattainable happiness, because you've created this bar so high that as soon as you achieve something, that bar just keeps going further and further up. And you're like, well, am I ever going to get there? But the process is where the meat is, right? Where it's like, you can actually live off of that for a very long time. So how did you make that switch?
Yeah, such a great question. You named that so well. The bar was never going to be hit. It was just going to continue to go up. There was no amount of anything that I was going to do to feel like I was good enough. I think the thing I had to start with was just sitting with feeling like a failure and sitting in the pain of that. And it was brutal. I mean, I was having multiple panic attacks most days. I'd been going, keep myself so busy, so on the go. I could have high profile meetings. I could meet with VCs, all these things that made me feel like I was worthy, I was good enough. And then when it kind of fell apart, I was like, I can't prop this up anymore. And so I have to sit with this pain and go, what does this mean? And it wasn't fun, having multiple panic attacks for days, per day for months on end was not fun. But I also think it was the most profound time period of my life because it did start that shift. And it's not perfect. I still certainly go like, we released a film last week and I'm checking YouTube views, of course, right? So it's certainly not perfect. And I still do care about how things do. But I have a lot more baseline. My personal worth isn't based in it. And to me, that's the number one thing. When it's process, it's just like, no, I do the best I can. I do this, 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 and this. If my self-worth is based in that, of course I have to have it succeed. I think a lot about a quote that we talk about with our athlete team, and I'm going to probably butcher this a little bit, but a reporter asked Kobe Bryant, what do you feel like after you win? And he was like, great. And they're like, why? And he's like, because there's more to learn. And then they're like, well, what do you feel like after you lose? And he's like, great, because there's more to learn. And if I can approach life with that curiosity, I'm always winning, actually, because if I DNF a race or I, fail at an initiative I work on or whatever, it's not that I'm a failure. It's that I now have an opportunity to continue to grow and take that into the next thing.
I cannot tell you how, like, the bells, not alarms, the bells that are ringing in my head right now in a good way, because one of the mantras we have at Run Try Bike is failure isn't terminal, it's the building block to success, right? Because it's an opportunity for us to learn and to move forward with things, not just, oh, this, our value is diminished because of this. So I appreciate you talking about that. One of the things I want to ask you, as you're talking about $20 million deal and $40 million a month, is wealth. I used to define wealth as a bank account number, and now I define it as time freedom. Oh, I think we just lost Peter. I'll ask you this, Evan. There we go.
There you go. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I don't know how much of that you heard, but one of the question I was leading to was wealth. You know, when you're talking about $20 million deals, losing $40 million a month, a lot of people will talk about wealth in currency. And for me, wealth has become the currency of time. Where am I spending my time? How am I spending my time? Like, how are you defining wealth these days? And did that shift also happen along that same time in the pandemic?
Yeah, I love that question because I think it is such a good reframe that, like, somebody who is only wealthy in money is pretty bankrupt in life, I would say. They probably don't have a lot of time. They probably don't have rich relationships. And you see people that do have all of those things. And to me, that's true wealth, that have financial security, but also have healthy relationships and also have time to do things they care about and have a sense of purpose. Um, yeah, that was something that I really took on during the pandemic, and that's still work I continue. And the way I think about it, and it's shifted for me, is so much of finances and money and that whole conversation is, for me at least, and I think for a lot of the world, is built around fear.
Yes.
And there's not enough, and I need to get mine. And we're checking our bank accounts, and we're going, there's not enough in there, and I see that with people I know and care about a lot, that they might have $15 million in the bank and they're spending, 100,000 a year and they're 70. But in their heads, they're still living in fear of, like, oh, it's not enough, right? To me, that's poverty. I had a really profound experience a couple months ago. We got invited up to one of the reservations by a medicine man to sit with him and do a couple ceremonies. And one of the first questions he asked me was like, what did you think of the DAPL protests? And I was like, oh, I was in favor. Like, yeah, you absolutely shouldn't be able to put a pipeline across your land without your permission, like 100%. I was like, were you there? And he was like, yeah. And he had just finished introducing me to a few of his kids. And he's like, yeah, I had a high paying job. I left it and I went and lived in a teepee there. We protested for 6 months, stopped it. And when we came back, I'd lost my house, I lost my job, I lost everything. And we had to live in a teepee in South Dakota for 2 more years. And my first thought, I have an 11-month-old, almost a year old, and my first thought was like, oh my God, the fear and pressure I would feel to make sure that she was taken care of and had a roof over her head and all this, I can't imagine. I said, that must have been terrifying. And he was like, he looked at me so confused. He's like, no, I was honored. And it was like so clear that, like, I was in his house, which had holes in it and not very much food in the fridge and all these things. And I then, after that experience, drove home to my house where we have multiple cars and we're not by no means rich, but like financially, but we do well, and we're comfortable. And it was so clear who had poverty. It was me who was afraid. And so to me, so much of it is around fear. If I'm living in there's enough and I'm okay, that's rich.
Yeah. The antidote to fear is, like you've said twice now, I've written it down, is curiosity.
Yeah.
Because if you're constantly curious, there's no way that fear can take over, because you're not afraid of it. You're just living life and being present and being there for all those moments.
Yeah, well said.
So then why are we afraid to be curious? Why do we feel like we have to have all the answers when we haven't even asked a question yet?
I would like to take that one first, only because I think we talked about this a little bit, Jason, when we were with our wives in the episode that's coming out, and we forgot how to play. We've been put into this system of needing to achieve in order to have worth and all these other things that we're told are going to make us happy. And we forgot how to just like be that like childlike self. Like you do it so well, Jason. Like you have fun all the time. Like there's certain levels of like us that need to go back to that way of like thinking. And it's not like, becoming the best person. It's like a returning to like who we actually were. And that's the way that I look at it.
Peter, I'm going to interrupt you before you answer. And I will tell you this. This wasn't always me, as anybody will tell you. This became me when I met Lori. And she said to me, I will never forget this. She said, "You are Puerto Rican. Be fucking Puerto Rican." Like, meaning be who you are. And like, just like that, that freedom that she gave me to shed the armor was unbelievable. And then all of a sudden I got to meet Peter and I got to meet Evan and I got to make connections and putting people in different places and being like, hey, you should meet this person and you should meet that person and everything else. And it was like, it was so profound for me to be able to find that light, that fun shined through. And I had this conversation with Lori just the other day. I said, if I died right now, I would die a happy man. Like, my bank account doesn't have multiple commas. We don't have the largest media company in the world, but I would die happy because I've been having fun for the last 5 years. That's not to say panic hasn't happened. Don't get me wrong, right? There've been multiple times where I'm like, shut the fucking company down. I'm done with it. Like, enough is enough. But always, like, then all of a sudden Evan will send me an email or a text message, or Peter will send me an email or a text message. And all of a sudden you're reminded of who you're surrounded by. And it's like, yeah, let's go have fun with these people.
Yeah, I heard from both of you, like, alignment, like really being aligned with who you are. And for me, I think that has been profound. I think for so many of us, we're walking through the world and our inner child is running the show. And that's really scary to it. It's trying to prove it's good enough. It's trying to make sure it's taken care of. All the things that society told it need to be, maybe some needs our parents missed when we were kids, no matter how good our parents are. And so it's pretty terrible at being in charge. Like, my inner 5 and 7-year-old is pretty terrible at being in charge. But it's really great when I'm in charge and I just let it go play. And so I think of it as like reparenting. My parents gave me a really good foundation, and it's my job to fill in the gaps and then reparent that, to give it the freedom to just play as a 5-year-old or 7-year-old should. And I can take on the hard stuff. And that then makes my life so much more fun, and I'm not living in fear.
Yeah, and we're so worried. And apologies before I even say this to Susie and Joe. Susie in Sarasota and Joe in Joplin, Missouri. Like, I don't give a shit what you think of me. Like, you're on the internet. Like, I don't care. Right.
Yeah.
And the moment we're capable of realizing that they're just fictitious characters in a book that we're writing on our own, we realize like we can go have fun. We literally just posted that we're hosting a dance class through the Everyday Athlete Clubhouse. And I had to put in there, you can keep your cameras off during the dance class, because I know people are going to be like, oh, I don't want to join because I'm going to be embarrassed. And I'm like, I'll be on camera. I'll make all the embarrassing dance moves. You guys keep your cameras off and come and hang out with us. Like, let's have fun with movement as well.
I love that. Just bringing them back to play and getting them comfortable. Because probably the first 5 times they show up with their cameras off, and then they go, oh, I can do this. I felt ridiculous in my living room, and my husband laughed at me. But then I realized that it's not that serious. I can laugh with him too.
Right.
Yeah. You were talking about the reparenting piece. And I think I've said it before, Jason. I don't know if you remember this line that I said, Jason, last year on a couple of the episodes, is like, your parents' ceiling is now your floor.
Yeah.
And it's not because they couldn't give you anything. It's because that's all that they were given up to that point. And it's like, now, just like me, like, I have two daughters, 8 and 10, and like, they're like, my ceiling is now their floor. And I'm like, well, but what happens if right now I can like keep raising my ceiling? That means their floor is getting further and further away. So there's like this level of like understanding for me of, if I can level up my own self, like, I can only, improve the well-being of my children as they grow up too. Cause it's like, they're going to be able to like go even higher than I even thought I could. So I think I like that line.
Does the way you raise your ceiling shift as your daughters have gotten older?
Yeah. Because of what I went through.
Yeah.
I think the things that I've experienced over the last 3 years with the mental health journey, and I've shared it a lot. Jason's heard my story, and a lot of listeners have heard my story. But yeah, the me growing and realizing what I'm capable of is definitely like just leveled it up immensely. Like I couldn't even imagine teaching my kids the emotional regulation that I now have. Like 4 years ago, like I was a very different individual.
What a gift to them.
No, absolutely.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
We asked this question on the reintroduction episode, Peter. I want to present it to you as well. So the idea of being our true selves, like we're talking about having fun, becoming a Buddhist monk, reading, like all of these different things. I want to get your take on, like, do you believe you're your truest self today, or is there still more growth to happen for you to become your truest self?
I'd say I'm the truest self I've ever been today, and there's still room to grow, and I think there will be until I die. You know, one of my favorite quotes is, "A fully mature man has about 2 seconds to live."
That's a great line.
And I love that because I want that to be my life. You know, I don't want it to be like, oh, I'm 80 and there's nothing left to give. There's nothing left to learn. No, like that continues until the moment before I croak.
I'm going to follow up that real quick, Evan. Like, as you said that, I started thinking to myself, like, when did we start to believe these phrases and these comments as opposed to brushing them aside and being like, that's just bullshit, hokey nonsense. Some, weed smoking hippie probably passed down to you when you were at Woodstock in '69. Like, when did we start to hear those words and process them so that we could elevate ourselves and elevate those around us, really? I'll ask that of you, Peter. When did those words become more meaningful?
I think for me, this started during the pandemic. I'd accumulated a lot of knowledge up to that point, and I think that continued in reading those 350 books, and that was a time period I desperately needed. But I think much of my work over the last 3 years has been about starting to embody that knowledge, and so they're no longer words just in my head. And there's fun, pithy quotes, and those are great, and they can be impactful. But how do those live in me? I think that's where those have really started to impact my life, and I started to believe them, and that's made my life a lot more fun, and it'll have a lot more purpose.
Yeah, that awareness without action is pretty useless, right? Like you can have all the awareness in the world, and like you said, you can have all this knowledge from all these books and all these things, but it's no different than that like self-help mentality of like you read all these books, but you never put anything into practice. Like what was the point of it then, right? Like you're not learning anything at that point. You're just like holding all this knowledge and, like you said, throwing a quote out every now and then that feels really good and everybody thinks you're so smart. Yeah, it's very different to like actually action it and like how can I fit this into my life to like improve my life. Yeah, completely agree. I'm curious, out of those 350 books, did you ever read the book called Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins?
I have not, but it's actually funny. My neighbor at the time, who's still a very good friend, he loves Dr. Hawkins. And so he's been telling me I need to. So I will add that to the list.
So that was my first book that I kind of latched onto when I was first going through my journey and I mean, just the idea of like letting go and surrendering to the process of me being a broken person in like the big scheme of things, like getting a diagnosis of PTSD and going like, oh man, like my 20-year career is gone now. And like letting go and being okay with surrendering to it. It took me a number of months, but he has this, and it's probably similar to within the Buddhist culture of that like consciousness and like the map of consciousness and how all emotions have like a vibrational frequency that kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with that terminology, but I mean, I was at that like lowest bottom, like shame, guilt, fear, denial. Like I was like in the absolute toilet. And now it's like, I refer back to that book to see where I am now 3 years later. And it's just like, that scale is just so true because I think we're in an epidemic of like not feeling rather than like people talk about this epidemic of loneliness. I'm like, how many men or even women, anybody don't know how to recognize like an actual feeling in your body when it happens. And that to me has been probably the biggest growth. So I'm curious with everything you've, I mean, you're going to be a Buddhist monk in 2 months, you said. That idea of consciousness and really like the highest level is enlightenment. Like that is like the absolute highest you can achieve, and very few will ever get to that place. So how has your journey been through, again, that bottom, that shame, that guilt, that fear of and anger of losing everything to where you are now?
Yeah. Huh. I love the way you talked about this, an epidemic of not feeling, because I think that's so much of my experience as well. I think for the first probably 8 years I meditated, I used it as a coping mechanism to not have to feel bad emotions, or bad emotions, emotions I don't like. And so much of my work has been going into that, having the capacity to hold whatever's coming up. I so deeply wanted to be enlightened during that time. That was such a like, oh, I want to get up there. But truly, it was just me trying to transcend my own pain in an avoidant way. It wasn't actually, I want to and have the capacity to be present in this moment. And so as I have sat in men's groups and now lead them, that's so much of my work, and then the work that I lead guys on. I mean, to go back to your point, I remember leading a men's retreat, and we asked the guy, like, find 3 emotions in your body and where they are. The guy was like, I don't even know when I'm hungry. I was like, you can't tell when you're hungry? Okay, so that's the starting place for that guy. And I would bet that's not too dissimilar to a lot of people. I eat because I'm supposed to, or there's food in front of me, or, so yeah, I think a lot less about enlightenment these days. And I think a lot more about how do I build capacity to hold whatever's coming up, whether that's grief. That's been a lot of work over the last 5 years, and continuing, I think that's, I was telling Jason earlier, we're going to put our cat down this week, and I could look around the world and go, oh man, compared to Gaza or, family that was just killed or whatever, that's nothing. But that's just minimizing my pain. And actually, when I can truly go into grief, I find that it actually connects me to those people. It's not a comparison. It's not going, oh, my pain is just as bad as theirs, but it is connecting to them. It's connecting in our humanity. And so the best line I ever heard from a Buddhist monk probably was when somebody asked him if he was enlightened. He said, I practice enlightenment the best I can each moment of every day. And to me, that's being present with grief, with anger, with whatever it is, and then not taking it out on the rest of the world. That's such an easy thing to do, is we either internalize it and get depressed and take it out on ourselves, or we're taking it out on the rest of the world. And so, yeah, I think that's been a majority of my work.
I mean, that goes right to the idea of, right, I did the best I could with what I had. That's it. Like, if you're able to reframe your thinking into that, everything else gets brighter. One of the things that you just talked about was connections. And I realized as you guys were talking, like, both of you are voracious readers. I clearly am more of a talker. And so when I talk to people like yourselves, I'm getting your intelligence from the books that you're reading. And I'm thinking about these connections that we are making all along the way. And I think it's proof that there's more than one way to deal with life, right? Some people will bury themselves in books. I would 100 times prefer to talk to somebody about the book that they read than for me to read the book. And I think that what happens for me is sort of that connection and that feeling is because when you're talking about the book, your eyes light up when you're bringing something in. And I feel that emotion coming out of you, and it creates an emotion in me. And so, I bring that up for the listeners, that if you do things a certain way, it's not a wrong way to do it. It's your way of doing it. And you should lean into that. And if you get curious to read, go read. If you're curious about watching a documentary, go watch the documentary. Like, there's not one right or wrong way to do this. Like, you're not morally superior because you read over somebody who would rather listen to a podcast or an audiobook for that matter, right? And one of the things that we've talked about was Brad Huff's accomplishments and sort of, what he's done above and beyond that. And we just hosted a panel discussion on inclusivity in endurance sports, where I asked Rach McBride, who is a non-binary athlete, They have two master's degrees in words I can't even pronounce. And I was like, beyond blown away. They are an expert cellist. They are a world champion in triathlon and gravel cycling. And I asked them if all of those things feel diminished because when they go to register for an event, there isn't a non-binary category. Right. And I bring this up because what we do impacts others, even if we don't know that it's impacting others. And so I want to bring this full circle to you, Peter. You're leading a team. And I wonder if the Peter that's leading a team today is far more capable of leading that team than the Peter from 10 years ago dealing with the anxiety and the stress and I'm not worthy if I don't close this $20 million deal. Like, are you a better leader today because you've been able to be open, honest, and vulnerable with yourself, let alone with others?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to tie it in with what you're talking about is with inclusivity. I think I had to get inclusive with myself so that I can actually truly be inclusive with others. I was a people pleaser, so I was really good at faking it. But when I can't, I was really like, I'm a good guy because I do all these things. Look at all the things I do to help people.
Team people pleaser. Yes.
But really, that was just me trying to manipulate everyone in the world into loving me so I didn't have to feel any pain. And now, as I start to get inclusive with myself and be with whatever comes up for me and, hold space for that, it gives me a lot more capacity to truly hold space for other people. So yeah, the answer is absolutely. I'm more vulnerable. The Godfather used to be my favorite movie, still a phenomenal movie, but I used to look at that. I remember watching that when I was like 10 or 12 and going like, oh, he never shows emotion on his face. That's what I want. That's power. And so I tried to emulate that. And I have a really good poker face, and I don't use it hardly ever anymore. And I think that's made me a much stronger leader.
You could still emulate that look that Marlon Brando had. All you have to do is roll up gauze and stick them in your cheeks. That's what he did. That's how he did that role so that his face didn't move because he had like gauze stuffed inside his cheeks. So if you ever want to practice at home, there's your
next
secret
podcast we do. I'm doing that the whole time.
Blooper reel. I like it. So I want to get into the men's work groups that you are a part of, that you created, that you run and lead with another gentleman. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name.
Yeah, there's a few of us. Brad Huff is one of those.
Okay, Brad is one of them. Okay.
Yeah.
So I got into breath work over the last number of years, more from a performance side of things with Oxygen Advantage. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not, but it's really about nasal breathing and really being present and creating more capacity in your body. But I found that it was so powerful for me when I was going through all of the therapy and PTSD and everything else that was running through my body. And I ended up getting asked by a friend last year to go and do some breath work at a retreat. And she was a sound healer and had tuning forks. And I walked into this room not really knowing what to expect. And I had them do an exercise where I asked them to write down one thing that they want to let go of that weekend. And I had them put it into a jar. And at the start of the breathwork practice, when I was just getting them relaxed and calm and kind of regulated, I started reading these things out of the jar just randomly, out of like pure anonymous. And the number of things that were said, like, my dad has cancer or lost relationship or all of these things that I didn't walk into that weekend like having that space already created. And I found it very difficult to hold space for a group of people who clearly we are all going through something. Like I said to Jason at the beginning, like we're all going through something. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's illness, cancer, finances, whatever it is. But how do you find a way to continue to hold space, not just for other people, but also keep yourself kind of present and not taking on those things? Because having worked in emergency services, it's very easy to take other people's pain on as your own. And it's hard work. It's not easy work to do. So how do you not only be there for people, but also be there for yourself in that as well and be able to be present?
Great question. And I can only imagine what you've had to carry with that. I mean, that's a lot to see the traumas that I'm sure you have. And it sounds like now you're moving from like saying outside wounds to saying inside wounds and holding space for that. I can't bullshit. That's the number one thing. I can't fake it. I can't behave like an asshole at home and then go in and be like, all right, guys, we're going to sit here. Like there's no artifice. They sniff that out immediately. I think it goes back to being a people pleaser. I've carried a lot of people's pain. And I think a lot of people get into the helping and healing aspects of life, whether that's medical, whether that's, more spiritual healing, whether that's therapy, often out of our own sense of pain, and sometimes is avoidantly. Like I can avoid mine if I'm taking care of yours. And so for me, I've had to get very present with my stuff, and that's regular. I say in men's group, like I require a lot of maintenance, and that doesn't mean I'm high maintenance. I'm not, but I require a lot of maintenance. And so that's regular meditation for me. That's regular exercise. That's journaling often. I talk to myself in my car while I'm driving often, and kind of talk to my inner child and go like, hey, what are you needing today? What's going on for you? And so I have to do a lot of that stuff regularly in order to then be able to show up for those guys and not take their pain on. And so when I do that, I'm pretty good at being present with them and then being present with myself when I leave. And so I'm not carrying out with me. I'm walking out the door. I'm like, no, I'm here. I'm back with Peter. I'm with his stuff and his humanity. And I don't have to take it on. I don't have to fix their stuff. I've so wanted to fix everyone's stuff because then I'll be okay when everybody else is fixed. And now I go, no, when I'm okay, that actually can leave a positive imprint in the world and the little areas that I get to be in.
I think that what you're describing is something that we all need to work on, which is it's not selfish to take care of ourselves, right? Yeah. It's vitally important that in order for you to be your best self for somebody else, you have to be your best self for yourself to begin with. And so that means blocking out time on your calendar to meditate, to go for a run, to do whatever it is you need to help center yourself. That is not selfish one bit. I remember when I first started this company, I would get so angry about people not replying to emails immediately, as if they've been sitting around waiting for this magical email, to come from Jason, right? Like they've just been waiting. Like I can't wait for my email to ding because Jason's sending an email. Yeah. And it's like, people are living their lives, dude. You set it out and it'll come back when it's ready to come back. And that's all there is to it. But I think it's just, we've been programmed that taking care of yourself is selfish. And it's just not. It really just is not selfish. If you want to be a narcissist, now I got problems with you. But taking care of yourself, I don't think is selfish. And for you, it sounds like that's what you're doing, Peter, right? Where you're reading books, you're even talking to yourself in your car, because you could easily call somebody else, right? Oh, I could handle this. I've got to get one of my field reps, to the Vermont 100. I can call them right now, as opposed to I'm going to keep this, next 30 minutes for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. At the level of franticness that I've showed up for teams, including the current team I have at times in the past, from that sense of not being enough, of worrying, that trying to control the results, all those things. And as you were alluding to earlier, Evan, when I focus on the process, it's good. My team's dialed. Often I'm just going to get in their way if I'm overstepping. I've got really good people. And so, yeah, I think we have been taught that it's selfish, but I think, one of my favorite teachers has been Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst. And he talks about, like, we have this collective shadow of all the things society's not willing to look at. And my understanding is it's built up of all of our personal shadows, the stuff we're not willing to look at. And the best thing we can do to fix society is start looking at our shadow so that we're not taking it out on everyone else around us. And that starts to reduce the collective shadow. And so it's actually the least selfish thing we can do. And like you said, that could be taken by a narcissist and be like, well, I'm taking care of me. And when I'm hungry, I want all my needs met. But that's actually just a really scared person.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think I grew up as a missionary kid. And so much of our life was built on service to others. And that's beautiful in a lot of ways. But when it's compulsive, it's not. If that's coming from a sense of alignment and this is who I am and this is true to me, I think that's a wonderful thing to help people and serve and all of that. And when it's a compulsive thing, I'm just taking my shit out of everybody else.
It's interesting. I actually have one of Carl Jung's quotes on my website that I've, again, probably one of the only quotes that I like really latched onto from the beginning of the healing journey. And once I kind of surrendered to it, is I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Because it's like all those things that they're so external. They're not you, they're of you, but they're not you. And that's such a powerful way to look at it, is like, there is no such thing as a right or a wrong decision. You can make any decision right with the right amount of like awareness and presence to be able to do that. So it's funny. You mentioned a few things that are very in line with my direction as well too. So it's just cool.
I would love, Evan, you've used this word twice now, and it's one I've wrestled with, and the word surrender. And you use it like, I'm going to imagine there was a hard fought battle there. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I will. So my unfortunate reality was my company and organization didn't believe my trauma. And I had to go through a process with workers' compensation of basically having to prove that what I was going through was real. And for months, my first few months of therapy, my therapist would always say, like, are you sure you're sharing everything that's coming up in the sessions? And I did what's called accelerated resolution therapy. So it's similar to EMDR, so eye hand movement, but I call it EMDR on steroids. It's, you have to process in the moment. You don't get to like take it and go home. You have to literally like feel what you're feeling in that moment and learn how to feel what those emotions are coming up in your body. Like if you're feeling stressed, like, are your hands hot? Are you clammy? Do you're like, even clammy right now, even talking about it? Like there's certain things that like come up in your body that if you don't take the time to pause and recognize, you're not going to be able to go through this process. And I probably had 120 sessions over the last 3 years of ART, just ART sessions, working through things in calls and events. But what really came to the catalyst was I had to go to an assessment with a psychologist that I didn't know, that was basically paid for by workers' comp. And that psychologist was going to do an assessment. It was like 1,000 multiple choice questions. You had a 2-hour interview. It was like intense, like 4 hours. And I remember my psychologist that I had a pretty good rapport with, working up to it. And she just looked at me and she said, if you don't completely crack open and surrender in that session, like, you are not going to get the help you need. And that was, for me, it was just like I still think about it. Like that was like my worst day I've had, even like outside of all the stuff that I've experienced and heard. But that one day, like in March of 2022, like that day is still just like cemented in my brain of like, that was the worst day because I actually like agreed with myself to just go like, you gotta let it go. Otherwise you're not going to get the help you need. And that was like the breaking point for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So surrender is so often thought of as like giving up. And what I'm hearing you saying, it was like the ultimate form of advocacy. It was almost surrendering of the walls that you've put up.
That's exactly what it was.
But it was the ultimate form of advocacy for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was the like giving myself permission to break.
Wow.
Yeah.
When people tell me that marketing doesn't work, I laugh because the word surrender has been marketed to us in the way that you've defined it, Peter, right? And so we feel like, okay, I'm giving up, of something when I surrender, instead of I'm going to be gaining something because I'm opening up. But the way it's marketed, the way it's talked about, the way it's constantly reinforced, this army surrendered to this army, right? That's how we perceive it in this battle scenario. But conversations like this help change the definition. And yes, we are on a slowly moving rock that's somewhere in the sky. But the more times we talk about this stuff, we can change what surrender means and allow ourselves to surrender to this scenario of advocacy for ourselves so that we can become better. The moment Evan started talking about it, I just thought to myself, when you gave the date of March 2022, I was like, I bet you in that moment till today, September 2025, the world has gotten brighter just a little bit on a daily basis because You went through that dark space and have now surrendered, and it's opened up a much brighter world for you to go and talk to people, hang out with people, share your emotions, talk to Cassie in a way you probably wouldn't have talked to her 5 years ago or 10 years ago as who you were then. And that makes for a better place. It makes for a better Evan.
Yeah. You get to claim your like space in this world back. And at the same time, you no longer feel like you have to hide.
Mm-hmm.
That's the probably the biggest thing, is the hiding and feeling like you have to keep it in, because if you spill it out on other people, like you're just going to hurt other people. And not being afraid of, again, coming back to the fear, not being afraid of how people are going to perceive you is huge. That's still something I'm working on, if that perception of self, right?
Here's an impossible question for you guys to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Peter's going first.
Yeah. What percentage of people do you think, when they say, I don't care what others think, actually don't care what others think? Because look, I just posted this on Threads yesterday or 2 days ago. I was like, somebody posted something like, you're not for everybody. And I'm like, you're right. I'm not for fucking everybody. And it's okay if they don't come and hang out with me. It's better for me if they don't come and hang out with me, because I'm not for them. But for those of you that are here, thank you for being here, for laughing, for crying, for sharing. Like, I appreciate you for being here. But that doesn't mean that I don't fully not care about what others think, right?
Yeah.
But the people that are so adamant, right? Like, I don't give a shit what so-and-so says. And I'm like, yeah, you do. You're just covering something up, right? Like, is their armor thicker?
I actually have been talking about this with various team members, and I'm asking on my team, I don't care to be replaced with, I'm afraid to care, so I'm shutting down. Because I think I don't care, 0% of people that are saying that actually don't care. They're deeply hurt by it. They're afraid of it. They're just putting up, they're building walls, not boundaries.
Right.
And the proper response, to me at least, because I've cared deeply what people think of me, and I've tried to be like, I don't care what this person on the internet says, but I do, is the honest truth. It hurts a little bit. But I care a lot less now. I care a lot less because I care a lot more about what my opinion is of myself than I do about what some random person on the internet says. And so I don't think I'll ever get a point where I don't care at all if somebody says something cruel, or if somebody on the internet might say something that really actually is true and causes me to evaluate it, that it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
So I'm going to react to that, of course. So my answer is 0%. If you're saying you don't care, I think you're just shutting down.
Yeah, it's funny. I say that exact line to my kids, Peter, about whose opinion matters the most. It's the opinion of yourself.
Yeah.
And like, if you want to wear those pants or that shirt today, and somebody says, "Oh, those pants are ugly," ask yourself, like, would you go to that person for advice?
Yep.
If you wouldn't go to that person for advice, then really their opinion definitely doesn't matter. Like, there's no doubt about it. My answer is the people who, I'll say, like, I lost a lot of relationships of just like people and like friends and things like that over the last 3 years. And I think it's because they care deeply about what other people care about them, and they're not ready to meet whatever they're experiencing in themselves yet. And me going and doing the work and showing the growth and all those, like stepping into the discomfort and the hard things, scares the shit out of them. So they're either going to distance themselves from me because it's too much, and like, holy crap, like, he's going to ask me to do this and I'm not ready for it. Or just seeing me or hearing me talk about it is like upsetting to them. So it's easier for them to distance themselves from it. And that's my belief, is it's something they haven't met within themselves yet, that maybe I'll be the catalyst for that. And maybe I'll be like somebody that is going to make them shove it down for another 5 years. Who knows? But I want to be around the people that I am the catalyst for. And I feel like I'm at that place now. It's like the people that are around me are the people that want to grow and want to build and want to like challenge themselves in those ways.
That makes me think. So I so aspire to do what you're doing with my daughter, Evan. I think the people that truly are like not hurt by what other people are thinking about them or saying about them, they don't say it. They're not going, I don't care. You know, that's such bravado.
Yes.
And I find the more I need to be really outspoken or braggadocious about something, the more it's usually me like actually feeling the opposite.
Yeah, this whole conversation is bringing me back to this concept of legacy. Like, what are we leaving behind, right?
Yeah.
And I would rather be the person who's remembered as the guy who built bigger tables to bring more people to the dinner table and hang out with, than the guy who was a complete asshole, but he built this empire by being a total dickhead. Like, I give me the table with all the different faces and cultures and languages and stories and laughter over sitting at a table by myself with a pile full of money because I don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
Like, that's not like, you do care.
Yeah. I think so often, like, it's so easy for us to get mad at billionaires and all this stuff. And I actually think the proper response is like, man, they're really lonely.
Yes.
I think they're little kids that are scared and trying to prove themselves. And it's like an addict, basically. You know, they can't stop. They're working 20 hours a day or whatever that they're doing. It's actually an addiction. And we should work with them from our sense of wholeness, not be slamming them or idolizing them. I think that those are the two tendencies that our society tends to do, is we either idolize them, man, they know what's going on. Like, do you actually want to live their lives? If you look at their day-to-day life, do you actually? No. Or we go like, money's bad. These guys are terrible. They're ruining society. And I think we just we're helping imprison them in that place even more of like, well, maybe if I make more, then I'll be loved, you know? And so it goes back to where we started with a rich life. Like, how do we invite them into a rich life, which is at that table with lots of people and might be sharing more and building communities?
Yeah, I saw a post yesterday right along those same lines that billionaires, once they reach that like billion mark, they should just get like an award and a prize that says you won capitalism, and every dollar after that they should have to give to like schools and hospitals and like you know, food banks. But like that, it should be like an award, like you won capitalism, great job everybody. Like,
yeah,
way to go.
And maybe there are some really some billionaires that are living in abundance and feeling free, and like maybe those are out there. The ones in the news I just see being like hurt little boys or girls that are like taking that out of the rest of the world. I think we reinforce it by screaming at them.
Shameless
no
plug,
doubt
our team can create those.
There's no doubt there's some sort of like inner child that, like you said, was like hurt at some reason. Like, nobody has that drive and that mentality. Like, people talk about David Goggins, you know, running Moab on a busted knee with pins in it and everything. And it's like, it's an amazing feat, no doubt. But like, what is happening to make you think that like, I need to go through this, or I want to go through this, to put yourself through that level of pain? Like, I don't understand that. Maybe it's because like I am where I am in my journey, but it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I just don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. So well said. What a good comparison to bring it back to sport, of the people that we see. Like, I love the idea of like, we see athletes that are running from things, or we see people that are doing things embodied and connected. And it's so apparent, the difference. And, you know, I think Brad Huff being one of the, you know, let's bring it back to Brad again. Like, he's doing things out of a place of wholeness in a lot of ways. And he does hard things because they really matter to him, versus somebody who's like, when I run 300 miles, I'll be good enough. You know, that's not what they're going to tell themselves. I'm going to be tough. I'm going to whatever. But it's never going to be enough. There's never going to be a race that's going to be enough.
No, not for a moment. And I think that's like, when you get to this place where, and again, it's you're always striving to get to this place. It's not like, oh, I landed on Plymouth Rock and I planted my flag and I'm good to go, right? We're going to keep exploring the depths of who we are. But I think when you start to find those areas of, I did this race, it was fantastic, it was a chapter in my book, and I'm moving on to the next thing, as opposed to hanging on to that event and promoting that event and talking about that event, you know, endlessly, is that person who's afraid of the next challenge. Because if they don't succeed at the next challenge, it somehow diminishes their accomplishment that they just had. And so I always fight with this concept with people, that the reason why we have gatekeeping in our sports is the fear that your either accomplishment. So let's say, you know, the bar for a marathon typically is 4 hours. If somebody finishes a marathon in 6 hours and I'm a 3:30 marathoner, somehow, some way, your 6 hour marathon diminishes my marathon accomplishment of 3:30. Or when you DNF an event, it somehow diminishes that I finished this race in 3:30, and they're just not one and the same. They're not the same thing whatsoever. And when you get to that point where you accept your accomplishments for your accomplishments, not worried about what, Susie or Joe's accomplishments are, these sports become far more fun. They become far more fun.
Yeah.
Both things can exist at the exact same time. And when you can get to that place of like, I may not agree with that, or I am like super related with it, but understanding that, like, again, this feeling aspect of like understanding emotions and thoughts, if as soon as you can get to the place where both things can exist at the exact same time and you're just neutral with it, you've won the game.
Yeah, so well said. I work with thousands of athletes a year in my job, and I've seen so many of them abandon families or financially hurting themselves to do another race because they DNF or whatever. And I'm like, is this your job? No, it's not. And we're here talking about everyday athletes, as I'm very much an everyday athlete. It's not my job. And so I do the best I can, but it's going back, having process. And I think the most profound, this is a little bit of a plug, but I think it really is a profound story. At Western States this year, one of our pros, Adam Peterman, was expected to have a shot at winning. And he had won it 3 years before to runner of the year. I mean, he's an incredible athlete, really good dude. And he was right up there. He's running next to Killian, for so long. And right before Forest Hill, he just couldn't run, and he didn't know why. And he came into Forest Hill, and there's an inflection point for him. Like, it's totally acceptable to DNF, and we saw athletes do that at Forest Hill, and that's totally fine if that's true to you. To me, it didn't feel true to me that Adam was going to drop, and it didn't seem like that was there for him either. And so when he came in, I just started talking to him about process. And he's like, dude, I can't go 40 more miles. I'm like, you don't have to. Next aid station's in 4 miles. You can go 4 miles. And he went back out. It took a long time. I'm sure the longest Adam's ever been out there is 23 hours. he was expecting to finish in 14. But it was so incredible to watch him do that. And I think it meant so much to this community. We just released a film about it called What Remains, and it's kind of alluded to that. What remains when the race goes sideways? But like, to me, that's the question we all have to ask: is whatever happens on a race, I'm not ever going to win a marathon. It's not my job to win a marathon. I train when I can around having a family. But if sport is the most important thing in my life, I'm doing it wrong. If sport is helping me be strong for my family, if sport is helping me learn about myself, if sport is helping me show up at my job better, that's the point for me, because it's not something I'm getting paid to do.
Those words couldn't be truer and need to be hung on a banner somewhere for a lot of everyday athletes who get caught up in the moment. Because here, I once coached an athlete to their first Ironman, and as we were going through taper, I said to her, if you just understand, on Saturday you're going to race. All of your data is going to get uploaded to Strava. You're going to post it to social media. And on Sunday, you're going to get so many backslaps. On Monday, they will have forgotten you because the following weekend, there's another Ironman and another marathon and another ultra that's going to happen. And somebody else is going to get those accolades that were bestowed upon you for your accomplishment. So remove that as the validation of all of your hard work. Understand that you've gone through the last 16, 20 weeks of training. You've become not just a better athlete, but a better person, a better employee, a better sibling, a better, daughter. Like, all of these things you're better at. And it's not necessarily the finish line accomplishment that defines what you will have done on that day in that moment. And I think if we take that approach to these events, again, I will say it as loud as I can, they become more fun. Like, remove the stress as much as you can from these things. And it's a holistic operation, right? That we have to focus on and what we need to do to get better at being better at these sports.
You will be the same person before and after if you can be understanding and be that neutral party and know that, like, the race, the outcome doesn't matter. The outcome doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with it. Yes, you might get more accolades. Yes, you might get brands and companies reaching out to you. You might get all those things. But if you can tell yourself that, like, I'm going to remain the same person, like, those are the people that are the ones that are having longevity in the sport, whether it be running, cycling, swimming, whatever it is. Like, that's how you stay in the sport for a longer period of time, is when you don't base your worth on outcome.
We're bumping up on time here, Peter, and want to be respectful of you, and thank you for joining us. We're going to put this in a business phrase. We're entering Q4. What is it that you want to do for the rest of this year? One thing, many things, whatever it might be, that's going to help elevate you as a person to be better for your wife, your kid, the employees, for Scratch?
That's a great question. Long pause on that one. I'm cutting away the things that aren't like true to my purpose here right now. And that's at Scratch. You know, I have prided myself on being so helpful, and that's a wonderful thing. And it's been very compulsive in a lot of ways for much of my life. And so I'm going, like, what are the areas I can really be helpful, but also what are the most important things that I can do? And so, yeah, I'm really looking at, like, what are the ways I need to lead in cutting away the bullshit that are the things that are distractions, that are the shiny objects, all of that. And so we're in a planning phase at Scratch right now, getting ready to lead a men's retreat here in about 4 weeks with Brad and a couple other guys. I think we have 30 guys signed up or something coming to that we're going to be hopefully having a big impact for. And to do those things well, I have to cut out all the noise. And to show up for my wife well, I have to cut out all the noise. And so, you know, that's been my friend circle, you know, tightening a little bit. And I don't go way out of my way for people that I don't know that well. That is at work of, like, you know, this is something that would be great to support, but it's not aligned with what our goals right now. And so actually we wouldn't be able to show up very well for them anyway. So it's better for both of us if I say no to this. So it's cutting things out is really a mantra for me right now.
Awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on the Enduring Minds podcast. Really, really insightful, open, honest discussion with some laughter, which proves that you can have fun while talking about the hard shit, right?
You're doing it wrong if you're not.
Thanks, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, guys. Talk soon.
All right, dude. First show for season 2. Thumbs up, thumbs half to the side, thumbs down. Where are you lying right now in the immediate aftermath of the show?
No, that was a deep conversation. And it was just like, it felt like it was just like 3 of us are out for coffee and we're actually just, you know, talking about life. And I think that hits a lot stronger than predetermined questions that don't have any, I guess I won't say relevance, but any connection to us in some way. Because 3 out of 4 times when I heard him say something, I immediately related it back to something that I have gone through, or I've, you know, the books, the quotes, those types of things. It's like when you have predetermined questions, you're almost in this like trance of like, I need to get to the next question, rather than listening and going like, okay, like there's a connection here and that's where I'm going to go. Because if I share part of my story, it's going to create that like bond with the listener that, oh man, like these guys are actually talking about deep shit, not just throwing questions at one another.
That goes back to what we talked about the entire episode, which was process, right? So we worked through the process instead of just worrying about the finish line. And, you know, embracing that process is huge. So appreciate you. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another guest. This has been fantastic. Evan, I cannot thank you enough for being a co-host on the Enduring Minds podcast. Thank you for your insight, for your openness and your honesty and your vulnerability, not just with me over the past couple of years, but also with the guests that we keep bringing on the show. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.